Well, hello, everyone. I'm James Dobson, and you're listening to Family Talk, a listener-supported ministry. In fact, thank you so much for being part of that support for James Dobson Family Institute. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us. I'm James Dobson, and our program today is going to be devoted to another ministry that I love and I'm very proud of. I'm not referring to JDFI or Family Talk, where you're listening to this broadcast. I'm talking about Summit Ministries. It's also located in Colorado Springs and in 2 locations in other places. If you have followed my radio programs through the years, you know that I highly recommend Summit to parents of teens who need help in launching their kids and preparing them to deal with a confused and often godless world. This ministry has been around for more than 60 years. I think it started in 1962. Jeff, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And we've been around talking about it almost that long. To help us discuss this, I have invited 2 guests, Dr. Jeff Myers, who is the president of Summit. And he is doing a wonderful job on behalf of, through the years, tens of thousands of kids who are now grown, most of them, and doing remarkable things for the Lord. Dr. Myers has written 14 books. He holds a Ph.D. from the University of Denver. And I really love and respect this man. Dr. Jeff, welcome back to Family Talk.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Dobson. It's so much fun to be back in the studio with you.
And we're going to talk about a very important thing today, your ministry. Give us kind of an overview. Give us a mission statement of Summit Ministries.
Well, Summit Ministries equips and supports the rising generation to embrace God's truth and to champion a biblical worldview. So we're looking for a generation that will bring all of their anxiety and depression to the Lord and say, I am ready to stand for what is true and to do so with courage and with compassion, especially on my university campus.
You're worried about this generation of youngsters, aren't you?
Well, 75% of young adults today say they have no sense of purpose or sense of meaning in life. Half of them say they regularly struggle with anxiety and depression. I haven't seen these levels in all of the years that I've been working with young people.
In the population that comes through your school.
What I'm seeing is we've had an entire generation say we're going to move away from truth. We believe that truth is up to the individual. There's no such thing as truth, capital T. And now we know where that gets us. If there's no truth, then there's no grounding for reality. You're always lost. You're always confused. And we're seeing in what we call Gen Z the fruit of that right now.
You know, I won't name him, but I had a retired president of a Christian college, one of the big universities, and he came in and sat down in my office, and I said, in the 25 years that you were president, what changed? And he said, it's a whole new ballgame. He said, when students first came here, they came in knowing the Bible. They knew what they believed, and they'd had a foundation. Yeah. They come in now having no understanding of the biblical truths at all. He said we've had to add additional programming just to get them up to speed on who Christ is and what the Scripture is all about. Have you seen a change like that?
The change we've seen is that the level of biblical literacy is as low as I could have imagined. George Barna's research says that only 4% of church-attending, self-identified Christian young people have a biblical worldview.
That breaks my heart.
4%.
You know that?
That's consistent with what you were saying. But the additional issue, and we talk about this with our students all the time, is just the idea that there even is truth that can be known. They don't believe that.
If you don't believe in absolute truth, then you don't believe Christ is divine. You don't believe God exists. You don't believe the Bible is true. If you don't believe in absolute truth, you don't believe in anything.
You don't even believe that reality is really real. Reality is something that's socially constructed through your individual experiences. And as hard as it is to believe, the vast majority of young adults in the United States of America hold to that belief that truth is up to the individual rather than something that's out there and can be discovered through God's revelation and through reason.
That's what we're going to focus on today with regard to Summit Ministries. Also with us is my son, Ryan Dobson, who's a graduate of Summit Ministries. He's spoken there a number of times and works there now. He holds a BA from Biola University in Southern California, and he's an author, a public speaker, has his own podcast, and he, as I said, works at Summit Ministries. He's married to Laura. They have 2 children, Lincoln and Lucy, who happen to be my grandchildren. Tell us about your ministry, which you call Rebel Parenting.
That's right.
What's the meaning of the title to start with?
I think we saw there was kind of an absentee parent going on. And I think, Jeff, you've been talking about this. We have usurped our duty as parents. You know, I can remember in Sunday school in my church, we would have sword drills. And where they would say Psalm 118, and you'd have to turn to Psalm 118 as fast as you could, and you'd raise your hand, and you'd get called on, and you'd read the scripture, and you'd learn positional where things in the Bible were. You'd learn to get there faster and faster. My kids don't know what a sword drill is. And I just wonder, there's so many breakdowns. It seemed like parents weren't as involved in their kids. It was like, oh, school curriculum. Yes, I'm sure they're going to do a good job there. Oh, Sunday school. I'm sure they're going to teach my kids.
That's their job.
Right. It's their job. And with Rebel Parenting, you have your kids for a short window. And in that window, you get to be a parent. You don't have to. I mean, you could farm it out to a nanny if you want to. But I believe you get to be a parent for that short window, and you should be involved in your child's life as much as humanly possible.
And that's where your emphasis is.
You got it.
Kind of to get us started, let's go back to your first experience with Summit Ministries.
Sure.
I had been concerned about the fact that you were 16 years of age and your world was very, very narrow.
It was.
And I wanted to broaden it, and I heard about Summit Ministries. This is way, way back. What year would that have been?
1986. You and Mom approached me and you said, hey, we found this really great camp we want you to go to. And I said, awesome. What's it like? And your direct words were, well, it's a lot like summer school, but you'll like it. And I said, no way. I don't like regular school.
You said, I've been sitting in classes all year. You want me to do what?
Yep, absolutely.
And we had quite a discussion over it. I decided you should go. You decided you didn't want to.
I just said, no, I'm not doing it. And you and Mom relented. You said, okay, next year comes around, 1987. I was 17 years old. And you said, hey, Ryan, you know that camp we want you to go to? And I remember thinking, yeah, that one I'm still not going to go to? I'm not going to summer school for camp.
Now, wait a minute. Let me tell this part of it. I said, well, look at it this way. You know that little white car that sits out in the driveway?
You said, Ryan, I've got a deal for you. And I said, oh, what's the deal? And you go, you know that car you drive? And I said, yes. And you said, well, if you go to camp, it'll still be here when you get back.
And we came to terms.
I guess so. We did.
The good news is that you went.
I did.
Kicking and screaming, if you will.
It's true.
And 3 nights later, you called me. And I know I remember this right. You said, this is the best thing that ever happened to me.
It's true. For any parent or grandparent listening, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't heading in the wrong direction. I just didn't have, as George Barna says about kids today, I didn't have a purpose. I did not see a clear path forward. I didn't think I was going to make a big deal or a big difference in life. And that seemed okay until I went to Summit. And Dr. David Noble and that staff said, oh, no. God created you with a purpose and with a meaning and a mission. You are going to change the world, and I have never stopped believing it. I am 51 years old. I've been back to Summit every single year for 35 years. It made every single difference for the rest of my life.
What was, in a nutshell, that difference?
Oh, my goodness. There are so many things. Honestly, for me, it was the first time I had encountered a large group of adults that wanted me to ask questions. I mean, you don't get that as a child, and you don't get it as a 17-year-old, and you don't get it as a smart 17-year-old. Where I have questions that are uncomfortable. I have questions that you may not have the answers to, and you don't get the feeling that adults want you to ask every question you have. Summit was different.
That was my experience as well, Ryan. I came as a student to Summit Ministries.
Did you really?
I was one of those kids who was graduating high school and thought, I think I'll just go ahead and graduate from church while I'm at it, because I can't find people who will take my questions seriously.
Thank you.
Well, I went to Summit Ministries. I walked in the front door of that antique hotel in the little hippie town, Manitou Springs. And I saw David Noble there, and I said, I hope you have a lot of answers because I have a lot of questions. I thought I was all that at age 17. What he said really surprised me.
What kind of questions, Jeff?
Well, I had questions like, how do we know there is a God? Mm-hmm. How do we know that the world is created rather than that it evolved?
Yep.
If there is a God, how do you reconcile God's goodness with the fact that there is pain? Because if God's really all-powerful, he could stop it. And if he doesn't stop it, that means he's not really good. I had basic questions like that. Why would we say the Bible is the revealed Word of God? What about the difference between Old Testament passages and New Testament passages? I had so many questions. But David Noble just said to me, at Summit, we aren't afraid of questions. That's all I needed to hear.
Yep.
I know questions are difficult.
Yeah.
I know answers are hard to come by.
Yep.
But I just needed a tribe of people who would say, bring your questions, it's okay. And
we aren't afraid of questions here at Summit. I'm telling you, there is not a teenager alive that doesn't want to hear that, because every one of them, they're saying, I'm getting ready to leave my home. I'm going to be on my own. I'm going to live my life. I've got to figure out, what do I believe? Why do I believe it? Does it flow in the same direction? Do I have contradictory beliefs? Will that cause me problems later in life? And you've got an entire staff of people going, oh, awesome. I'm so glad you have that question. Let's talk about that. It is the most comforting thing as a teenager.
I think one thing a lot of young adults realize is that the days of convenient Christianity, as my pastor says, are over. Yeah. They recognize that we are moving into a different world, and they feel fear instinctively. So we're saying to them, you have a purpose, there's meaning for your life, you are intended to be someone who makes a difference. And they're saying to us, if that's true and I desperately want it to be, I need to know that what I am standing for is actually true.
What David Noble said to me, he was the founder of Summit Ministries, he said, we are deeply concerned about the fact that these kids are coming out, most of them out of Christian homes and families, and they're going straight into colleges where everything they believe is going to be challenged. Everything is going to be ripped into. And we want to get that generation ready to deal with that. Mm-hmm. That's essentially the mission statement, isn't it?
It is still a mission.
To prepare these kids for a world that's hostile to Christianity.
That's right. And the hostility continues to grow. I know a lot of people, when we say that, say, oh, you're just exaggerating or you're trying to get more attention. But the truth is, more and more in the United States of America and in many other countries, especially in the West, it's no longer taken for granted that you can even know what truth is. And once you get to that place, then all claims, Christianity included, are just opinions.
Yes.
And there's no way to really know whether it's so.
Right.
And if one opinion is somehow hurtful to another person, then it's wrong. By definition, it's wrong, because somebody might feel offended by it. Mm-hmm. That's where we are. That's the difference. So when our students are going off to campuses now, they're not saying, I don't think the Bible is true. They're saying, I don't think there is such a thing as truth.
Right.
And that's where we have to start at Summit. There is such a thing as truth. God exists.
And a college student who has the courage to stand up and say that he is a Christian is going to be attacked and put on the defensive and made to feel like a fool. You got to get them ready for that. Mm-hmm. So I want to say to the parents who are listening to us right now and to the grandparents, everybody's telling you ought to do something, you ought to buy something, you ought to read something, you ought to do something. But I'm telling you, this is one that you ought to take seriously because the world has changed and it is hostile to the Christian faith. And if you've got kids that age, I call them kids. Some of them are early 20s, aren't they? The age range is about 16 to 20 what?
Say 22.
All right, if they're in that range and you can influence them, get them to this program, you will not be disappointed. And in fact, most of them will absolutely love it, like Ryan.
We had George Barna, the veteran social researcher, help us study our students from this last summer. So I mentioned that 4% of young Christians in America have a biblical worldview. He found that by the time they left 2 weeks at Summit Ministries, 86% had a biblical worldview.
Unbelievable.
And we did another study of our graduates later on because we thought, well, of course, everybody's excited after camp. Right. But we found that years out, they were telling us only 40% of them felt able to defend their faith when they came into the program, and 90% felt able when they left the program. They're telling
Ryan,
us
that program
years later.
Changed your life, didn't it?
100%.
I mean, it set the stage for everything that has occurred since then.
That's right. And we're talking to parents right now. So one of my other jobs, I run a podcast with my wife. We do it every week. We talk about marriage and parenting. But I call the parents who send their children to Summit. So between August of last year and June of this year, I'm calling 1,100 parents. But in the last year, calling over 1,000 parents, not one parent has said they regret sending their child to Summit. Not one. That's a huge deal. Not one says they regret it. But when I talk to them on the phone, I hear relief in their voices. I have a 15-year-old. He's getting ready to leave home in a few years. He's going to go to college. And I've started getting that feeling, that anxious feeling. I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough at the faith. I didn't teach you enough things. And that fear invades your parenting. So now I just want to tell him things all the time. But I'm thankful because he's going to go to Summit. And I talk to these parents whose kids are getting ready to leave home. And they're like, oh, Ryan, you get that, oh, I'm so glad I sent my child. I didn't waste any money, and they came home, and now I feel, oh, they have the foundation. The things I hoped they would say that would let me know they understand Jesus, they understand eternity, they understand that Christian worldview, they understand these things. They're saying them to me, Ryan. Oh, I'm so glad. That's the greatest feeling, telling a parent to send their kid to Summit and then talking to them later and going, oh, it was awesome. It was awesome.
You know what parents love so much about it is their kids sometimes come home and say, did you know?
Yes.
And they repeat back to them the things that they've been telling them all of their lives.
Yeah.
But there are just some things that you need to hear from somebody else. There needs to be someone else in your child's life who also says so.
When Ryan came home from that first trip, he was 17. And he was full up to here. He came home with answers, Ryan. I've never seen anything like it.
I'll tell you what else it gave me, Dad. If you think back to the political upheaval of the late 70s and early 80s, we had Jimmy Carter in office. Inflation was at an all-time high. I mean, we're talking about gas prices right now during the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. We could buy gas on odd and even days based on your license plate. There were 2-3 hour long lines.
Sat in line.
That's right. And then Reagan came in, and there was all these people talking politics, and they sounded smart. The people on the left sounded like they were smart, but everything they said differed from what you and Mom believed, and there was an internal conflict I wasn't talking about, and it was, I need to know what I believe, but my goodness, if I find truth and my parents are wrong, this will be devastating to my relationship. I was so afraid of finding out you were wrong. And I went to Summit, and not only did I find out answers to foundational questions, why am I here? Where do I go when I die? Does Jesus love me? Why does he love me? Why does he think I have a purpose for being on this earth? But I got my relationship with you and Mom back because I knew you had been telling me the truth the whole time. That's a big deal.
That's rather gratifying for a parent.
In that same study Dr. Jeff's quoting from, Barna asks teens, who is the number one most influential person in your life? And their answer is my parents. Children answer my parents. They roll their eyes at you, they act like teenagers can, and they are watching you.
Jeff, at the time that Ryan came, the ministry was in this dilapidated dormitory, and the kids loved it. I tried, when David Noble was running things, I tried to raise money for him to build a new building, and the kids yelled and screamed and said, no, don't do it. But you have modernized it now.
We have this beautiful antique hotel in Manitou Springs, Colorado. Mm-hmm. It's the little town tucked in right at the foot of Pikes Peak. And we have updated it. In fact, we've won several awards from the Historical Society for the best renovation. So we tried to maintain the
When was that
thing
built?
about, it started in the 1880s.
My goodness.
It's a great story. In fact, our architect for the program was the great-grandson of the man who built the building. And when he heard that young people were coming to faith in Christ at that hotel, he said, I want to be your architect. Well, he's a famous architect. And he helped us rebuild that building and prepare it for the next generation. But we have more locations now, Dr. Dobson. We also use the campus of Covenant College in Georgia. We use the campus of Asbury University in Wilmore, Kentucky. And then we customize programs for groups all over the world.
How many students a year do you have?
Well, this last year with our curriculum courses and in-person, we had 66,000, more than 66,000 students.
That thrills me. I can't tell you.
Dr. Jeff, tell my dad about the custom-made programs you're doing for churches and groups that want, especially adults, that want to learn the things their kids are coming back with, that they're like, I can't go to Colorado for 2 weeks, and you're designing programs specifically for them.
Well, we started by developing a program called Base Camp for adults, just a half-day program, one that would cover key issues from a biblical worldview. So we've done them on gender identity, on pro-life, on a number of key issues. And then we said, well, look, what program do you want? We'll come to you, because we have 75 instructors, all of whom love Jesus and are the top authors and speakers in their field. I was just on the phone with one of our speakers who's at a major university tonight, and he called and said, hey, I just want to check in with you on something because I'm getting ready to speak to all these university students. They're in the arena. So we did a program for Service Academy cadets, 150 of them for the whole weekend. We've done programs for churches, week-long things, curriculum courses, all sorts of things. We just decided that, look, what we're talking about with the biblical worldview is so important. We want you to come and study with us for 2 weeks, that we know that's life-changing, but we also want to help your church, your local Christian school, your homeschool co-op, and other groups so that you can train young people right where you are.
That's right. Dr. Jeff and the Summit instructors are going where they're needed. They're not saying, hey, we've got a great location, just come on and see us. They're saying, if you've got a need, we're going to come to you. We'll teach you where you're at. I mean, that is dedication to a cause. It's why I believe in Dr. Jeff and Summit.
Well, I can't believe how fast this program has gone by, and there's so much more to talk about here, more of the details. We haven't even told people how to register and who to call and what to do. Ryan, that is your expertise.
That's right.
Share with people what they need to know. We really only got a couple of minutes, but we'll pick it up next time.
That's right. We've got a lot more to talk about, but for those parents and grandparents saying, I got to send my child or grandchild to Summit, you can go to summit.org, summit.org. If you sign your child up before March 31st, you get $200 off the tuition.
That's for the coming summer.
Correct. That's for this summer. If you use the code REBEL22, they'll give you another $100 off the summer session. So it's $300 off before March 31st. If you use the code REBEL22, you can sign your kids up.
If they didn't catch that, they can get it online.
Yep. All this information can be found at drjamesdobson.org/broadcast.
Now, we are out of time. Dr. Jeff Myers and Ryan Dobson, it's a pleasure to have you here. There's so much more that we need to talk about. There's a lot of detail here. I urge people to come back and be with us because we want to describe this program more fully. There's a lot of stuff here for your kids and your family, and you will never be the same for having sent them. So thank you for being with us. We'll pick up right here next time.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dr. Dobson. This is a rising generation that has enormous potential.
Is it fulfilling to you, sir?
This is the best job I've ever had.
Winning people to Christ, young people particularly, is there nothing better than that, right?
Nothing better.
No way.
Let's talk about it next time.
You've been listening to Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk and part one of Dr. Dobson's recent conversation with his son, Ryan Dobson, and Dr. Jeff Myers, the president of Summit Ministries. I'm Roger Marsh. You know, Summit Ministries has been teaching and equipping young adults with a biblical worldview for 60 years, and countless lives have been impacted and changed as a result of their work. To hear any part of the program that you might have missed today, visit drjamesdobson.org/broadcast. That's drjamesdobson.org/broadcast. broadcast. Or give us a call, day or night, at 877-732-6825. We have team members available 24/7 to take your call and to answer your questions about the JDFI and Family Talk. That number again is 877-732-6825. Dr. Jeff Myers and Ryan Dobson will be joining Dr. Dobson again tomorrow to talk about how young men and women can be equipped with truth and a biblical worldview. You will not want to miss this conversation. Thanks so much for your support and for listening to Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
This has been a presentation of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute.
Hi everyone, Dr. Tim Clinton here. When you think about your family and where they'll be when you're no longer living, are you worried? Are you confident? You hopeful? What kind of a legacy are you leaving for your children and their children right now? Here at Family Talk, we're committed to helping you understand the legacy that you're leaving your family. Join us today at drjamesdobson.org. You're going to find helpful insights, tips, and advice from Dr. Dobson himself. And remember, your legacy matters.